The streets were quieter than usual that afternoon, with only a few cars passing by as the young boy walked home from school. He had taken the same route countless times, but this time, something was different. A small, weathered wallet lay in the middle of the sidewalk, its edges slightly frayed, as though it had been tossed aside carelessly. At first, he hesitated, wondering if it was someone else's lost item or if it was a trap. But as his eyes moved over the wallet, his heart told him something was off. Curiosity and a sense of responsibility overwhelmed him. He bent down and picked it up, feeling its weight in his hands. The wallet was thick, filled with cash, and a few credit cards poked out from the folds. He glanced around, looking for anyone who might be searching for it, but the street was empty. There was no sign of anyone in a hurry, no frantic looking over shoulders. It had been left there for a reason, he thought, maybe by accident, or maybe by someone who didn't care about it. As he stood up, he opened the wallet to check for any form of identification that could help him find the owner. A few pieces of paper, an ID, and a business card caught his eye. The name on the card was unfamiliar, but what stood out most was the company's logo. It was the kind of place where people didn't just work, they thrived. A high-end, luxury business where fortunes were made. The man who owned the company, as he remembered from school rumors, was a millionaire, an influential man who was known for his private life and high standards. The boy's fingers traced the edges of the wallet as a sudden decision formed in his mind. He couldn't just leave it here. He couldn't take it. This wasn't his money. It was clear the wallet belonged to someone who had more than enough. It would be easy to pocket the cash and pretend it had never happened, but that didn't sit right with him. That's not who he was. He turned around, feeling the weight of the decision press on his shoulders. It was only a short walk from here to the millionaire's mansion, a big, imposing house with a perfectly manicured lawn. The man who lived there had a reputation, but the boy didn't know much beyond the whispers that often echoed in school corridors. He wasn't sure what he was walking into, but he knew this was the right thing to do. His heart raced as he walked toward the mansion, the sun beginning to set behind the towering buildings around him. His steps echoed on the pavement, the rhythm a steady beat that kept him moving forward. He reached the ornate gate, which was slightly ajar. Without thinking, he pushed it open, the creaking sound loud in the stillness. His palms felt clammy, and he suddenly wondered if this was a mistake. What if the man didn't appreciate the gesture? What if he got in trouble? He rang the doorbell, and after a few moments, the door opened. The man who stood before him was tall, impeccably dressed, his sharp features betraying the calm confidence that matched his wealth. The boy, looking up at him, suddenly felt small in comparison. The millionaire seemed surprised at the sight of the young boy holding the wallet. He studied him for a moment, eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to gauge his intentions. "Can I help you?" the man asked, his voice smooth and calculating. The boy cleared his throat, suddenly feeling unsure of himself. "I found this wallet on the street," he said, holding it out. "I thought you might want it back." The man's expression softened for a moment as he took the wallet, his fingers brushing against the boy's hand. A brief flicker of recognition passed over his face, though it was quickly replaced with a guarded expression. "That's very kind of you," the man said, almost too politely. "It's not every day someone returns a wallet like this." The boy nodded awkwardly. "I just wanted to make sure it got back to you." The millionaire raised an eyebrow. "You're a good kid," he said, his gaze lingering on the boy. "I'm sure you could use a reward for your honesty." The boy shook his head quickly. "I don't need a reward. I just did what was right." A flicker of something passed across the millionaire's face, but it disappeared as quickly as it had come. "You're sure about that?" he asked, almost like he was testing him. "You don't need anything?" "No, sir," the boy said firmly, standing a little straighter now. "I just wanted to return it." There was a moment of silence. The millionaire seemed to study him for a second longer, before nodding. "All right, then. But I must insist, let me give you something. For your trouble." The boy felt a strange unease settle in his chest. He wasn't sure why, but something about the way the man was offering the reward felt off. Still, he felt his heart pull toward the right thing, to stand firm. "I really don't need anything, sir. I just wanted to make sure you got this." The millionaire paused, his eyes now intense as he looked down at the boy. For a split second, the boy felt like he was being examined, like the millionaire was searching for something deeper within him. But then, with a small nod, the man stepped back and closed the door. The boy stood there for a moment, a wave of confusion sweeping over him. The encounter had been odd. The millionaire had been polite, but there was something in his demeanor that suggested he was more interested in the boy than he was letting on. With a small frown, the boy turned and walked away, his heart still racing. Little did he know, this simple act of returning a lost wallet would soon spark a series of events that would change his life forever. The following morning, the boy tried to put the odd encounter out of his mind. The sun shone brightly as he walked into school, a slight unease still lingering in his chest. Maybe he was overthinking things, maybe the millionaire was just surprised by his honesty. After all, not everyone would return a lost wallet with so much cash in it. Still, the boy couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to the situation. The day was uneventful until lunchtime, when his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from his mother. The millionaire called. "He wants to speak with you. Be careful." His heart sank. He had no idea why the man would reach out again. He hadn't taken the reward, he had done nothing wrong. Still, he couldn't help but feel that something about the entire situation was strange. The boy quickly finished his lunch and headed to the principal's office, where he was asked to meet the millionaire. When he walked into the office, the millionaire was waiting for him, sitting in a large leather chair behind a polished wooden desk. He looked just as calm as he had the day before, but there was something more calculating in his eyes now. He rose as the boy entered, offering him a seat with a gesture. "Please, sit," the millionaire said smoothly, his voice almost too polite. "I wanted to thank you again for returning my wallet. You're the kind of person who values integrity." The boy nodded, unsure of where this conversation was headed. "You're welcome, sir. I just did what seemed right." "Of course," the millionaire said, his smile cool. "But you see, I have a few other questions. Some personal questions, if you don't mind." The boy's stomach twisted. There it was again, the strange tension in the millionaire's voice. He tried to remain calm. "I'm not sure what you mean, sir. I don't have anything else to say about the wallet." No, the millionaire reassured him, his eyes never leaving the boy's face. "I'm not here to question you about the wallet anymore. What I'm interested in is you." The boy frowned, his confusion growing. "Me?" "Yes," the millionaire said. "You're an honest kid. There aren't many like you. I can tell you come from a good family. But I'm curious, what's your story? Why are you so different from the others?" The boy hesitated. Was the millionaire trying to flatter him? Was he trying to figure out how to use him somehow? The questions felt invasive, as though the millionaire was prying into his personal life for reasons the boy didn't understand. "I'm just me," the boy said cautiously. "I just try to do what's right." The millionaire seemed to study him for a moment, eyes narrowing slightly. "Right. Well, I'm a man of opportunities, you know? I like to see potential in people. Maybe I could offer you something. A chance." The boy's heart raced. This was becoming more uncomfortable by the second. A chance for what? The millionaire leaned forward slightly, his voice low and purposeful. "A chance to better your life. I'm offering you an opportunity to be part of something bigger. I can help you, your family, your future. I can make sure you have everything you need." The boy stared at him, unsure whether to be flattered or frightened. "What exactly are you talking about, sir?" The millionaire's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're a bright kid. And that's why I'm offering you a chance to work for me. Help me with something important, something no one else can do. It's a small job, really, but I'm sure you'd be up for it." The boy's mind raced. This was unexpected. But there was something off about the way the millionaire spoke, like he wasn't just offering a job but something deeper, something that didn't sit well. The boy tried to hide his unease, but it was growing by the second. I don't understand, the boy said. I don't want anything. I just returned the wallet. I don't need anything in return. The millionaire's expression shifted, just for a second, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. But he quickly masked it with a smooth smile. I respect your honesty. But there are other ways to show respect. Money can't always buy integrity, but it can open doors. And I think you deserve a chance to step through one. The boy stood up suddenly, feeling a sense of urgency in his chest. I think I should go now. The millionaire stood too, a little faster than before. Of course. Just think about it. I'll be in touch. The boy didn't wait for another word. He turned and walked out of the office, his mind whirling with confusion and unease. As he walked down the hallway, he couldn't help but wonder, what had he just stepped into? Was the millionaire really offering him something good, or was there something darker lurking behind his words? It was clear the millionaire wasn't done with him yet. The encounter had left the boy with more questions than answers, and the sense of being trapped in a situation he didn't fully understand gnawed at him. Little did he know, this simple return of a lost wallet would soon lead him down a path that would change his life forever. The next day felt like an eternity. The boy couldn't shake the eerie feeling that had settled in his chest after his conversation with the millionaire. The offer, the questions, it was all too strange. He tried to push it to the back of his mind as he focused on his schoolwork, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the mansion, to the man who seemed so interested in him. Just as the final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, the boy's stomach sank. The principal's voice echoed over the loudspeaker, calling for him to come to the office immediately. There was a strange tone in her voice, calm, but not quite right. As the boy made his way to the office, his mind raced. Was it about the wallet again? Had he done something wrong by returning it? Maybe the millionaire had changed his mind. Maybe he'd misunderstood the entire situation. He pushed the door open, and his eyes immediately fell on the unfamiliar faces in the room. 2 police officers stood by the principal's desk, their serious expressions making the air feel thick with tension. The boy's heart pounded as he stood frozen in the doorway. Come in, please, the principal said, her voice soft but firm. The boy entered, glancing between the officers and the principal. His hands were clammy, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. One of the officers, a tall man with graying hair, looked at him with an unsettling calmness. Are you the one who returned the wallet to Mr. Delaney yesterday? He asked. The boy nodded, his throat dry. Yes, sir. Good, the officer said, though there was no warmth in his voice. We need to ask you a few questions about that wallet. The principal looked at the boy with concern, but didn't say anything, as though waiting for the officers to explain. The second officer, a younger man, spoke up. We've got reports that the wallet was stolen, and it's being claimed that you were involved in taking the wallet and attempting to steal money from it. Is that true? The boy's blood ran cold. No, sir, he exclaimed, his voice trembling. I didn't steal anything. I found the wallet on the street and returned it. I didn't take anything from it. The officers exchanged a glance, and the older officer raised a brow. Well, that's not what we've been told. Mr. Delaney, the owner of the wallet, claims otherwise. The boy's chest tightened. But I didn't take anything. I swear. I just returned it. There's been some confusion, the younger officer said, scribbling something down in a notebook. Mr. Delaney says you approached him and insisted you needed a reward, even after he refused to give you one. You didn't just return the wallet, you had other motives. The boy's mind reeled. I didn't ask for anything. I told him I didn't want anything. I just wanted to give it back to him. He swallowed hard. Why would I lie about that? The officers weren't convinced. The older officer's gaze was cold. We're going to need you to come with us for further questioning. This situation needs to be cleared up. No. The boy's voice cracked as panic set in. I didn't do anything wrong. I just returned the wallet. Please, you've got to believe me. But the officers remained unmoved. The boy was taken into the back of a squad car, and the world seemed to slow down as they drove him to the police station. Every passing minute felt like an eternity. He had no idea what was going on, but all he knew was that he had been thrown into a situation that was completely out of his control. When they arrived at the station, the boy was led into an interrogation room. His hands were clammy, his throat dry as dust. He sat on a hard chair, trying to steady his nerves. The officers didn't say much, they just watched him, waiting for him to crack. The silence in the room was deafening. He thought about his family, his mom, his dad, wondering what they were going to think when they found out he was being accused of something he hadn't done. He had tried so hard to do the right thing. He had never even considered keeping the wallet, never thought about taking any of the money. All he wanted was to return it. Minutes dragged on, but then, the door opened. The principal entered, her face filled with worry. Behind her was the boy's mother, her expression both concerned and angry. My son didn't do anything wrong, his mother said firmly, stepping forward. You have no right to accuse him of stealing. The officers glanced at each other, but said nothing. I told you it wasn't him, the principal added, her voice shaking. This is all a misunderstanding. He returned the wallet, and now you're treating him like a criminal. The boy's mom turned to him, her eyes filled with concern. Tell them, honey. You didn't do anything wrong, right? The boy's throat tightened, and he nodded. I didn't do anything wrong, Mom. I swear. But just as he spoke those words, the door opened again, and a figure entered the room, the millionaire, Mr. Delaney, dressed in his sharp suit. He walked in with a sense of authority, his presence filling the space like a storm cloud. The boy's heart raced, but there was something in the millionaire's eyes that made him feel like he was being judged, like his every word and action was under scrutiny. Mr. Delaney, the principal said, her voice tense. You've made some serious accusations. Are you sure about what you're saying? The millionaire looked down at the boy, his gaze cold and calculating. I'm sure, he said quietly, his voice steady. This boy tried to steal from me. He returned the wallet, yes, but I know what he was really after. The boy's mother stepped forward, her fists clenched. That's a lie. My son did nothing wrong. He found the wallet and returned it, and now you're accusing him of something else. But the millionaire didn't flinch. I know what I saw, he said, his voice unwavering. And the truth will come out. The room fell silent. The boy's heart raced, his mind reeling. What was happening? Why was this man doing this to him? Little did he know, the millionaire's words were just the beginning of a much larger and darker story that would unfold. And his simple act of kindness would soon be overshadowed by something far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The boy sat in that sterile interrogation room, his mind racing as the millionaire's words echoed in his ears. He tried to steal from me, the accusation seemed absurd. How could a simple return of a wallet lead to such an intense confrontation? What was happening? Why was this man, whom he had helped, now turning his life upside down? His mother was visibly furious, her face flushed with anger. You don't know my son. He wouldn't steal from anyone, let alone you, she shouted, her voice trembling with emotion. But the millionaire stood there, unwavering, his cold eyes never leaving the boy. I know what I saw, he repeated, his voice sharp and firm. I've been in business for too long to not recognize when someone has ulterior motives. The boy could feel his stomach churning. This was not how he had imagined his day going. He had never expected to end up at the police station, accused of something he didn't do. He only wanted to return the wallet, to do the right thing. How had it all gone so wrong? The officers, too, seemed torn. They exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of confusion and skepticism. They had heard the millionaire's accusations, But something about the situation didn't feel right to them. They had no solid evidence to support his claim, but their training told them to remain neutral, to investigate all angles. As the tension hung in the air, the boy's mother turned to the principal. "Why are we even listening to this man? We don't have to stand for these accusations. We've raised our son right. He's an honest kid." The principal, who had been silent for most of the exchange, spoke up. "I agree. There's no evidence that supports Mr. Delaney's claims. We need to look into this more carefully." But the millionaire wasn't finished. His voice was calm but chilling as he turned toward the officers. "You don't understand. This isn't just about the wallet. This boy is involved in something much larger than you can imagine. Something that could ruin both of our lives." The boy felt a wave of dread wash over him. What was he talking about? He had no idea what this man was insinuating, but it didn't take much to understand that it wasn't good. The millionaire was playing a dangerous game, and the boy, unknowingly, had been dragged into it. Before he could respond, the principal motioned for the boy's mother to step aside. She led her to a quiet corner of the room, leaving the boy alone with the officers and Mr. Delaney. "Tell me the truth, son," one of the officers said, his voice softer now. "Did you take anything from the wallet?" The boy shook his head vigorously. "No. I swear, I didn't take anything. I found it on the street. I returned it, just like I said." The officer paused, watching him closely. "We need to investigate this further. Your story doesn't quite add up with Mr. Delaney's version of events." The boy's chest tightened. "But it's true. I didn't take anything." "Look, kid," the officer said, his tone softening slightly. "We're not accusing you of anything, but there's something going on here. And we need to get to the bottom of it." The boy didn't know what to say. His world felt like it was unraveling around him. He couldn't even understand why the millionaire had been so insistent on turning him into a criminal. Why had he lied? And what was this larger conspiracy the millionaire kept hinting at? Before the boy could respond, the door to the room opened once more, and in walked a man in a dark suit, a lawyer, by the looks of him. He was tall and serious, his eyes sharp and calculating. "Mr. Delaney," the lawyer said, his voice smooth but stern. "I've spoken with your legal team, and I think it's time we take this conversation somewhere more private." The millionaire didn't hesitate. He nodded curtly, turning to the boy one last time before heading toward the door. "This isn't over," he said, his eyes cold. "You'll regret this." The boy's heart dropped. What did he mean by that? What kind of power did this man have over him? The lawyer and the millionaire walked out, leaving the boy and the officers in a heavy silence. The boy's mother and principal returned, their faces filled with concern. "What did he say?" his mother asked urgently. The boy shook his head. "I don't understand any of it. He's accusing me of something I didn't do. He's acting like I'm guilty of something." The principal's face darkened. "I'm going to call your lawyer. This is getting out of hand." But the boy could already feel it. The pieces of a much larger puzzle were starting to fall into place, but he couldn't see the full picture yet. All he knew was that he had returned a wallet, and now, for some reason, his life was spiraling into something much darker. The millionaire, with his quiet threats and mysterious comments, was hiding something. Something the boy had no idea about, but somehow, he was connected to it now. What was the secret that the millionaire was so desperate to keep hidden? And why had he chosen to target the boy of all people? As the minutes ticked by, the boy's thoughts turned to the life he had known before this. A simple life. A life where he went to school, played sports with his friends, and spent time with his family. He wanted that life back. But now, he was caught up in something far beyond his control. And he wasn't sure how, or if, he could get out. The longer he sat there, the more he realized something terrifying. Returning the wallet may have been the most dangerous decision of his life. And the worst part? He hadn't even Knowing what he was getting into, the next few days felt like an emotional whirlwind for the boy. He tried to return to school, but everything had changed. His classmates whispered behind his back, casting sideways glances whenever he walked by. No one had come right out and said it, but the air was thick with suspicion. A once respected, quiet kid had become the center of an ugly scandal that no one seemed to fully understand. But worse, they didn't seem to care. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some kids said he was involved in a criminal ring, others whispered that he was in league with the Millionaire. No one knew the full truth, but the more time passed, the more the boy began to feel isolated. His reputation, which had been built on years of being quiet and respectful, was shattered in an instant. Every time he passed a group of students, he heard the hushed tones, the stifled laughter. Some of the boys even started avoiding him altogether, treating him like a pariah, while the girls looked at him with a mix of confusion and curiosity. The weight of it all was unbearable. It didn't help that the media had caught wind of the story. Local news stations began to run stories about the young boy who tried to steal from a millionaire, and reporters started showing up at the school, trying to get a glimpse of the boy they had turned into a spectacle. The attention was too much for him to handle. He wanted to run away, to hide from the cameras and the questions. But there was nowhere to escape. To make matters worse, the millionaire's lawyer had sent a formal letter to the school, demanding that the boy's records be reviewed. It wasn't clear what the millionaire wanted from that, but the insinuation was disturbing. The boy's mother was beside herself, constantly on the phone with legal experts, trying to figure out how they could clear his name. But nothing seemed to be working. The police had started treating him as a suspect, not just a witness. Investigations were still ongoing, but it was clear that the more they dug into the millionaire's life, the deeper they had to go into the boy's. The boy was now part of something he had never imagined, a financial scandal, money laundering, and even worse, possible connections to criminal organizations. Every time he tried to explain that he had done nothing wrong, no one seemed to believe him. He was caught in a web of lies and accusations, his words falling on deaf ears. The phone calls came more frequently now, calls from reporters, calls from lawyers, and the occasional call from school administrators. His life had become a series of impersonal questions, investigations, and accusations. The boy felt like a puppet, his strings being pulled by forces he couldn't see. The worst part? He didn't know how to stop it. His friends, the few who had stuck by him, had begun to drift away. No one wanted to be associated with the troublemaker. The isolation was eating him alive, and the worst part was the constant nagging feeling that he had been part of something much bigger than he ever intended. He had returned a wallet, something so simple, so pure. But now, he had become a pawn in a game he didn't understand. One afternoon, the boy sat in the kitchen, his head buried in his hands, his heart heavy with the weight of the situation. His mother sat beside him, trying to offer comfort, but nothing she said seemed to help. He couldn't escape the fact that, no matter how hard he tried to do the right thing, it had backfired in the worst way possible. "I didn't do anything wrong," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. His mother placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle but firm. "I know, honey. I know. And we're going to prove that." But the doubt in her eyes, the worry that had taken root in her heart, was impossible to ignore. It was clear to her that things weren't just about the wallet anymore. There was something darker, something dangerous at play, and her son had unwittingly become entangled in it. Just as he was about to sink into the darkness of it all, there was a knock at the door. He wasn't sure what to expect, another lawyer, another journalist, perhaps even the police again. But when his mother opened the door, it was a face he hadn't seen in days, one of his closest friends from school. "I'm so sorry," his friend said, his voice filled with remorse. "I've been thinking about you, and I just wanted to make sure you were okay." The boy's heart leapt at the sight of his friend. It was a small, simple gesture, but it was the first sign of support he had received in what felt like forever. "Thanks for coming," the boy said, managing a faint smile despite the storm brewing inside him. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." His friend nodded solemnly. You didn't deserve this. I know it's hard, but don't let them break you. We all know the truth. We're here for you, okay? The boy felt a swell of gratitude, a brief flicker of hope in a sea of darkness. Maybe he hadn't lost everything after all. Maybe there were people who still believed in him, people who hadn't been swayed by the lies. But even as the boy clung to this small, flickering flame of support, the reality was that his life was far from over. The millionaire's web of lies was deepening, and no one, not even his family or friends, knew just how far it would stretch. The boy had returned a lost wallet, but now he was fighting for something much bigger than just his reputation. He was fighting for his future, and, perhaps, his freedom. And as he sat there, a quiet voice inside him whispered, the truth would come out. It had to. But as the boy would soon discover, even truth could be twisted, and what seemed like an innocent act could have repercussions far beyond anyone's control. He had no idea how far the millionaire's grip reached, but he would soon find out. And with each passing day, the walls seemed to close in even tighter. Days turned into weeks, and the situation continued to spiral out of control. The boy's life had been reduced to a series of chaotic events, each one more unexpected and frightening than the last. He had hoped that, somehow, things would get better, maybe someone would realize that he was just a kid trying to do the right thing. But as the weeks dragged on, it became clear that no one was listening. The whispers grew louder, the accusations more severe, and his isolation deepened. Then, one cold morning, something unexpected happened. His mother was sitting at the kitchen table, reading through another set of legal documents, when her phone rang. She answered it on the second ring, and her expression changed instantly. Wait, what? She said, her voice rising with both excitement and disbelief. Are you sure? The boy, sitting quietly across from her, looked up at her with a sense of dread. Her hand shook as she placed the phone down, and her eyes locked with his. Mom? What is it? The boy asked, his voice trembling. Sweetheart. I think we may have just found something, she said, her voice almost a whisper. The millionaire, Mr. Delaney, he's not who he says he is. The boy's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? What are you talking about? She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. I've been speaking with some people, some lawyers who specialize in cases like this. And it turns out, Mr. Delaney has a history. A dark one. His company is involved in financial crimes, money laundering, embezzlement, all sorts of illegal activities. The boy's mouth went dry. But, he seemed so perfect. I thought he was just some rich guy trying to help. His mother shook her head. That's what he wants everyone to think. But he's been under investigation for years. The wallet you returned, apparently, it was part of a much bigger operation. The boy's mind was reeling. Money laundering? Embezzlement? He had never in a million years imagined that the wallet he had found on the street could be connected to something so nefarious. He had simply thought it was someone's misplaced belonging, a lost item to return. But now, everything had changed. But why would he blame me? The boy asked. Why me? I didn't even know any of this was going on. His mother's face tightened. I don't know, sweetheart. But I think you stumbled onto something he didn't want anyone to know about. And now, he's trying to make you the scapegoat. The boy felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. A scapegoat? He had been nothing more than an honest kid who wanted to do the right thing. How had it come to this? How had his simple act of kindness been twisted into something so dark and dangerous? I don't understand, the boy muttered, his voice filled with frustration. Why didn't anyone tell me this before? Why didn't they warn me? His mother placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Because they didn't know. No one knew the full extent of what was happening. But now we do. And we're going to make sure the truth comes out. The boy sat back in his chair, still processing everything. His mind kept racing, trying to connect the dots. The millionaire's sudden interest in him, the accusations, the strange offer to work for him, it all made sense now. He had been the unintentional witness to something much bigger than he could have ever imagined. And the worst part? He hadn't even realized it. Just then, his mother's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, her eyes narrowing. "This is it," she said, her voice suddenly firm. "This is the breakthrough we've been waiting for." The boy leaned forward, his heart pounding. "What is it?" His mother pressed the speakerphone button and answered the call. "Hello?" A voice on the other end replied, calm and measured, but with a sense of urgency. "Mrs. Carter? It's Detective Bennett. I have some information you need to hear." The boy's heart skipped a beat. "A detective?" "Go ahead," his mother said, her voice steady. "There's been a development," Detective Bennett continued. "It turns out Mr. Delaney's company is under investigation for much more than just financial fraud. We've uncovered evidence that links him to a number of illegal operations, including laundering money through his personal accounts." "And the wallet your son returned?" "We believe it was a piece of evidence he was trying to hide." The boy felt a cold chill wash over him. "What do you mean, evidence?" "From what we've pieced together, the wallet contained documents, files and numbers that would have exposed his entire operation. And your son, unknowingly, became the person who found it." The boy sat in stunned silence, trying to absorb what the detective had just said. The wallet wasn't just a wallet, it was a key piece of evidence in a massive criminal network. His mother looked at him, her eyes wide. "So, he's been framing my son this whole time? He's been accusing him of stealing when, in reality, he's the one who's been hiding the truth?" "Exactly," the detective replied. "And we've already begun to investigate the full extent of Mr. Delaney's activities. Your son's honesty has led us to the breakthrough we needed to finally crack the case." The boy's mind was spinning. He had done nothing more than return a wallet, yet somehow, his actions had triggered a sequence of events that had brought down a criminal empire. He felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. This was far from over, though. "We're going to need your son to testify," Detective Bennett said, bringing him back to reality. "But rest assured, we'll protect him. He's not in any danger." The boy nodded, but his heart was heavy. He had no idea what kind of future lay ahead, but he knew this was the beginning of something far bigger than himself. As his mother hung up the phone, she turned to him. "You've done the right thing, honey. And now, the truth is coming to light. But we still have a long road ahead." The boy nodded, feeling the weight of everything he had been through. The road ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain, the truth was on his side. And with that truth, he would find a way to rebuild his life, piece by piece. But for now, he had to face the hardest part, living through the storm that was about to break. The boy stood at the edge of his reality, watching it all come together, yet feeling as if he were still trapped in a nightmare. What had begun as a simple act of returning a lost wallet had thrust him into the middle of a storm, one that was about to explode in a way he couldn't have foreseen. The millionaire's empire, once seemingly unshakable, was now crumbling, and the boy found himself at the heart of it all. Days passed in a blur. The media frenzy only intensified as word of Mr. Delaney's criminal activities spread like wildfire. Investigators scoured every inch of the millionaire's mansion, his offices, and his businesses. For once, the boy found himself not as the villain in the story, but as the unintentional hero, someone who had unknowingly set off the chain of events that would bring the millionaire to justice. Despite all the attention, the boy still couldn't escape the shadow that loomed over him. The accusations, the whispers, the public suspicion, those things had not disappeared. No matter how many times the truth came to light, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being judged for something that wasn't his fault. And then, just as the pressure reached its peak, the phone call came. His mother answered it quickly, her eyes widening with shock. "It's Detective Bennett," she said, barely able to hide the anxiety in her voice. "They've arrested him." The boy's heart skipped. The millionaire, the man who had turned his life upside down, was finally behind bars. He felt a strange mix of satisfaction and disbelief. Part of him wanted to feel victorious, but the other part, the part that had seen the pain and turmoil this had caused, felt numb. That evening, as they sat around the kitchen table, the boy's mother looked at him, her face filled with a mix of pride and relief. "We've done it," she said softly, her voice breaking. "The truth is out, and it's over. It's finally over." The boy nodded, though he didn't feel the sense of closure he had expected. The case was far from finished. The millionaire would likely face trial, and the boy would still have to testify, but that wasn't the part that weighed on him. What weighed on him was the realization that his life would never be the same. He could never go back to the way things were before he returned the wallet, before his life was turned upside down by a stranger's deceit. The next day, the boy was called to the police station once more. This time, it wasn't to be interrogated, but to give a formal statement about the events that had led to Mr. Delaney's arrest. The boy stood before the detectives, his hands clenched tightly at his sides, and recounted everything: the moment he found the wallet, the millionaire's strange behavior, the accusations that followed. When he was done, Detective Bennett turned to him with a small but genuine smile. "You did the right thing, son. You've helped us more than you know." The boy didn't know what to say. He still couldn't wrap his mind around it all. The idea that something as simple as returning a wallet could unravel the life of a man so powerful and dangerous, it felt surreal. Just then, the door opened, and the boy's mother walked in. She had a calm but resolute look on her face. "We're done here, right?" she asked the detective. Bennett nodded. "For now. We'll need your son to testify at trial, but for the moment, he's no longer under suspicion. We've gathered enough evidence to prove his innocence." The boy felt a weight lift from his chest. Innocence. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he could breathe again. It wasn't over, but it was close. The nightmare was almost behind him. As they walked out of the station together, the boy's mother pulled him into a hug. "We made it through, baby. You stayed strong. You did what was right." "I didn't do it for the attention or the reward," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "I just wanted to return a wallet." His mother smiled softly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I know. But in doing so, you've shown everyone something much more important. You've shown them what it means to have integrity. You've shown them that even in the hardest moments, it's the right thing that matters." The boy nodded, but he still felt uncertain about what came next. His life had changed, his reputation had been shattered, but now it was slowly being rebuilt. The truth had come out, but it had come at a great cost. And despite the relief he felt, there was still a part of him that couldn't help but wonder, what if he had never returned that wallet? What if he had just kept the money, as so many others would have? Would his life have been easier? Or would he have lost something even more important in the process? That night, as the boy lay in bed, he thought about the lessons he had learned. He had faced challenges, accusations, and fears he had never imagined, but through it all, he had learned the most important lesson of all. Integrity wasn't just about doing the right thing when people were watching, it was about doing the right thing even when no one else would. In the end, that simple act of returning a lost wallet had been more than just an honest mistake. It had been a moment of courage, a stand for what was right, and in the face of. That moment had proved to be more powerful than anything the millionaire's wealth or influence could buy. And as the boy finally closed his eyes to sleep, he realized that no matter what the future held, he would always stand by his choice. Because in the end, doing what was right would always matter more than anything else. And that, he knew, was a truth worth holding on to. The weeks after the millionaire's arrest passed in a blur, the boy's life slowly starting to regain a semblance of normalcy. The media attention began to wane, though not entirely, and he could finally walk through the hallways of his school without hearing whispers behind his back. But even as things settled down, a weight remained on his chest, a feeling that wouldn't leave him. It wasn't the press or the accusations anymore, it was the decision he had to make. Despite the victory, despite the fact that the truth had finally come to light, there was still a nagging question hanging over him: what now? His family had been through so much: his mother, who had stood by him when no one else would, his father, who had spent countless nights worrying and strategizing how to clear their names. The boy had spent so long in the shadows of doubt that, now that the storm seemed to be over, he didn't know what to do with the quiet that followed. The boy sat at his desk, staring at his homework, but his mind was elsewhere. He thought about his future, his plans, his dreams, and how everything had changed in an instant. He had never been one for ambition, never really thought much about what kind of career he wanted. His life had been simple. Go to school, help at home, hang out with friends. But now, it all seemed unclear. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. His mother stepped in, her eyes still holding that quiet strength she'd carried through the hardest of times. "Hey, kid," she said gently, sitting on the edge of his bed. "How's the homework going?" He gave her a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's fine, Mom." She studied him for a moment, the knowing look in her eyes reflecting the concern she had for him. "You've been awfully quiet lately." "More than usual." "Talk to me. What's on your mind?" The boy shifted uncomfortably, feeling like he was betraying his own emotions by admitting them aloud. "I don't know, Mom. I don't feel like I'm the same person anymore. Everything's changed. And I don't know what to do with all of it." She reached out and gently touched his arm. "I know, sweetheart. I know it's been hard. But you've grown. You've faced things that most adults never have to, and you did it with courage. You didn't back down, even when it seemed like the world was against you. But now, what? I don't know what to do with this. With what happened. I didn't ask for any of it, but now I have to live with it. Everyone's treating me differently. Like I'm some hero, or some kind of victim. And I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore." His mother's voice softened. "You don't have to know right now. That's the thing about life, it's messy. But you've learned something important, that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, is the only thing that matters. The world may never fully understand what you've been through, but that doesn't change who you are." The boy felt a tear well up in his eye, and he quickly wiped it away. "But I just want things to go back to normal. To be just a regular kid again." "You will be," his mother assured him, her hand brushing through his hair. "But remember, normal isn't always about what you had. It's about what you make of it. You've been given a chance to choose who you become. Not everyone gets that." For the first time in a while, the boy felt something stir inside him, a sense of possibility. Maybe he couldn't go back to what had been, but maybe that wasn't the point. The point was, he had been through something no one else could understand. And in a strange way, that gave him a kind of power. The following week, the boy received an unexpected letter. It was from the law firm handling Mr. Delaney's case. At first, his stomach turned at the thought of it, but his curiosity got the better of him. He opened it carefully, almost afraid of what it might say. But as he read, his heart raced. They wanted him to be a witness in the upcoming trial. Not just a statement of facts, but to stand before the court and tell his story, to help bring down the rest of the operation Delaney had been running. The letter spoke of protection, of the chance to finally close this chapter of his life and make sure the truth was known to the world. It was a huge responsibility. His mother had always taught him to stand up for what was right, to never back down when the truth was on his side. But standing in front of a courtroom, speaking before a judge and jury, that was something different. That was terrifying. The boy had already faced more than his share of fear and uncertainty, but this felt like the next step in a journey he wasn't sure he was ready to take. Later that evening, he sat down with his family and shared the letter. His mother, as always, remained calm, but her face was filled with concern. "It's your decision, sweetheart. But you've got to ask yourself, what are you willing to give to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else? Are you ready for this?" The boy hesitated. He wasn't sure. The weight of the decision felt immense. But as he thought about everything that had happened, how he had been thrust into a story bigger than himself, how his life had been turned upside down by something he couldn't control, he realized something important. He had come this far because he had made the choice to stand up. He had chosen to do the right thing when no one else would. And maybe, just maybe, this was his chance to make sure it counted for something. The next day, he called the law firm and agreed to testify. The decision was difficult. It meant stepping into the unknown once more, into the spotlight that he had spent so long avoiding. But he knew it was the right thing. He had come this far because of his integrity. And now, he would use it to help others, to make sure no one else would be caught in the web of deception that had nearly destroyed him. His mother, when she found out, pulled him into a tight hug. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "I always knew you were capable of so much." The boy smiled, but there was something different about it now. He wasn't the same scared kid who had picked up that wallet off the street. He wasn't the kid who had been accused of crimes he didn't commit. He was something more now. He was someone who had chosen to do what was right, even when it was the hardest thing in the world. And in the end, that was all he could ever be. The day of the trial arrived. The courtroom was filled with tension, the air thick with anticipation as the boy sat in the witness stand, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never imagined that his life would lead him here, yet here he was, facing a room full of people, all waiting for him to speak. He had been through so much to get to this point, and now, as he stared down at his hands, slightly trembling, he couldn't help but feel a wave of disbelief wash over him. This was it. The final chapter of a story that had started with a simple act of kindness. He had returned a lost wallet, and in doing so, he had found himself in the middle of a life-changing journey. His decisions had led him to this moment, and now he had to stand up and finish what he had started. His mother sat in the front row, her face filled with quiet pride and concern. She had been by his side through it all, supporting him when no one else had. She knew the strength it had taken for him to reach this point. The boy could feel her presence like a warm shield, a reminder of the love and guidance that had helped him survive the darkest times. The courtroom was silent as the defense attorney stood up, preparing to cross-examine him. The boy could feel the weight of the moment, but he also knew that this was his chance to make sure the truth was heard. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about making sure no one else would ever suffer because of Mr. Delaney's lies and manipulation. "Tell us, young man," the defense attorney began, his tone cold and calculating, "why should we believe that you returned this wallet out of the goodness of your heart, and not because you were trying to hide your true intentions?" The boy swallowed hard. He had expected the questions to come, but now that they were here, he felt the pressure building. He glanced over at his mother, who gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. "I didn't want anything," the boy said, his voice steady but soft. "I found the wallet, and I just wanted to return it. It wasn't mine. I didn't want to take anything from it. I just wanted to do what was right." The attorney raised an eyebrow, pushing further. "But you're telling us you didn't know who the wallet belonged to? You didn't know that it was part of a larger operation?" The boy shook his head. "I had no idea. I didn't know anything about that until after I returned it. I never wanted any of this to happen. I just wanted to do the right thing." There was a long pause as the defense attorney seemed to consider his words. The boy's heart raced, and for a moment, he feared he hadn't been convincing enough. But then, he heard the voice of the prosecutor, who stood and stepped forward to address the court. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, his voice calm but firm. "We've heard the truth from this young man. He returned the wallet with no ulterior motive. He did what most people wouldn't have done. He didn't let the fear of getting involved stop him from doing the right thing. And because of his actions, we were able to uncover a massive criminal network that has been hiding in plain sight." The courtroom fell silent again as the weight of the words sank in. The prosecutor turned to the boy, his gaze full of respect. "You've shown us that integrity matters. That doing what's right, no matter the cost, is what defines a person. And now, your courage has given us the chance to take down a dangerous criminal operation. The boy's chest tightened, a mixture of pride and exhaustion flooding through him. He had done it. The truth was out, and he had helped expose the darkness that had been lurking beneath the surface. The road had been long and painful, but now, as the trial continued and the millionaire was officially convicted, the boy could finally see the end of the tunnel. The trial didn't last much longer after that. The evidence against Mr. Delaney was overwhelming, and within hours, the verdict was delivered. Guilty. The boy could barely comprehend it as he sat in the courtroom, watching the man who had tried to destroy him being taken away in handcuffs. It was a surreal moment. The man who had framed him, the man who had lied and manipulated everything, was finally facing justice. As the courtroom cleared, the boy's mother hugged him tightly, her tears mingling with a smile of pride. "You did it, honey. You stood up for what was right." The boy nodded, feeling the weight of everything begin to lift. He had faced his fears, spoken the truth, and stood tall in the face of overwhelming odds. He wasn't the same person he had been when he first found the wallet. He was stronger, wiser, and more certain of who he was than ever before. In the days that followed, the boy found himself reflecting on everything he had learned. Throughout this journey, it had been a hard road, one that had forced him to grow in ways he had never imagined. But in the end, he realized something profound: doing the right thing didn't always lead to instant rewards or recognition. Sometimes, it meant facing challenges, even suffering, in order to protect what mattered most. But as he looked around at his family and friends, he understood that the most valuable thing he had gained was a deeper sense of self. He had learned that integrity wasn't just about following the rules, it was about having the courage to make the right choice, even when no one was watching. He had learned that even in the darkest of times, the truth had the power to bring light. And that, in the end, was what mattered most. As he looked toward the future, the boy knew that he would carry these lessons with him, no matter where life took him. His journey was far from over, but he now understood that the choices he made would shape his destiny. And with every step, he would continue to choose the truth, no matter the cost. Because in the end, integrity was more than just a choice, it was the foundation upon which everything else was built. And that, he realized, was a lesson worth living for.